Dan's life started on a cattle ranch in west central Idaho. After high school, Dan went on to join the army. Upon finishing basic training, he received the American Spirit Honor Award for being a high example to his comrades in arms. Before Dan left the army, he achieved the rank of E5 as a medical specialist. Upon leaving the army, he attended Boise State University. While there, his interest peaked in anthropology, archaeology, and geology. In the early 2000s, his interest led him to explore precious metals. This interest led Dan to put together what he needed to do in search for precious metals in the backcountry of Idaho. What you will see in the following video summarizes the 3 summers he spent as a modern-day prospector. Before setting out on his search for precious metals, Dan took a map of Idaho and examined where other claims were. He chose areas with respect for the established claims. He would often go into areas where he wanted to prospect before the first snow all melted and marked his claim. A few times he got caught in late snow. The claim was marked with a notice on orange paper and the details placed below in a Cape PVC pipe. In this slide, we see his helpers Mark and Wayne carrying a small high banker. Wayne's grandson is getting a ride up the hill. Here you see the high banker working. It pumps water over excavated material, separating the lighter material. The high banker setup got its name because of the large amount of material it can separate at one time. Here is a picture of Dan shoveling material for the high banker. There were times when Dan and his crew would bring in a backhoe to go below the surface several feet where hand digging was not practical. This was done when signs of gold and other precious metals were at that depth. His 2 primary tools were a pickaxe and a handheld GPS meter. They would use the pickaxe for breaking up rocks, and the handheld GPS gave them the precise location for they found ore. Running buckets of material over a screen was another method used in separating the larger rocks from the smaller ones. You see here a portable sleuth. It being of a size where it could be attached to a backpack. It came in handy when going upstream and checking for varying mineral deposits. In this picture, you see the tent where Dan lived as well as the covering of the rock crusher station. This campsite was done along Forest Service Road. Here is a close-up of the rock crushing station. In this slide, you can see from the top left corner to the top right as the finer material is separated. The bottom left to right shows the material as starts out in the crushing process to a place where it is screened. Here the top green bowls have screens starting from 1/4 to 1/8. Dan didn't spend all his time in a hole digging. Whoever came with him took turns digging out material. From time to time an unwelcome visitor would show up, checking out the operation. Dan enjoyed the wilderness of central Idaho in the winter, spring, summer, and fall. Prospecting gave him one of several excuses to be in the wilderness. Here could be seen checking out Dan's operation. Rocky Mountain tanager was often spotted. Dan would have friends come for a visit. He would have them work as a claim guard. If you look closely at this burnt-out tree, you will see the face of an old man. This was one of many fantastic sights they would see while prospecting. Here we find a marmot peering over a large rock. If you look closely, you will see a fawn sheltering in the brush. Its mother left her there for some unknown reason. Later that day, fawn and mother were spotted together. Along another mountainside, Dan discovered a group of rock formations similar to this one. They were formed by a melting glacier. The Franklin grouse are otherwise known as fool's hen. They were heavily hunted by prospectors for food. Now they are a protected species. But in the backcountry, Dan would opt for a smaller dome tent because the larger tent and gear was too much to carry on his back. One time he forgot to bring a fishing pole. So, he used his .357 Magnum to get a fish for dinner. Poor fish. Not every trip went smoothly. Once Dan broke his ankle and had to be airlifted out. Sometimes the promise of ore was in locations that were difficult to access. Like here in a petrified log. The common misconception is that all you have to do is put some mineral laden dirt in a pan and wash out the light stuff and you get gold. The reality is the gold-colored nuggets you have after panning still have impurities. They need to be removed before you can get market value for them. Then whoever you sell the pure gold to takes his cut off whatever it is going to at the time. From panning, you will most likely get a combination of heavy metals along with any gold. This is known as garnets. One method of seeing what heavy metals are by having the ore soaked in an acid, resulting in the different minerals being revealed by their various colors as seen in these containers. In this picture, you can see oxygen and acetylene tanks along with other items used to separate the gold from other heavy metals. What you see here is step 1 of a 2-step process to separate heavy metals from gold. This is the larger of the 2 crucibles, burns off metals like copper and zinc. When the molten ore is poured into the smaller crucible, it is heated to a hotter temperature to where the yellow you see here is pure gold. This meter is used to check the ionization in streams. The higher the ionization level meant the increased likelihood of finding the mineral deposits they were looking for. One of his last steps is to examine our results under a microscope and record them. In this slide is a few of those nuggets. 3 summers, Dan and his crew prospected the claims north of Idaho City, near the South Fork of the Salmon River, and north of the Anderson Ranch Reserve. He worked on the claims from May to late December. Over all 3 of those summers were when Dan and his helpers did a little more than break even. Dan came to the conclusion for investment purposes, he is better off to just go to Money Metals Exchange and buy gold or silver coins.